Coming to you live from Austin, Texas at OSCON. I'm Barton George. I'm here with...
I'm Cote.
And we are here with our special guest,
Abby Kearns.
Abby, what the heck do you do? First, thank you for coming on the show.
I am the Executive Director of Cloud Foundry Foundation. So I oversee the open source foundation for Cloud Foundry.
Cool. And you two used to work together.
We did.
Shh, I was keeping that a secret.
I think we collaborated on text, slides, what the best drinks were on the 5th floor of certain buildings.
Booth duty, I
Booth
remember.
duty.
Yeah.
Booth duty.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
Back in the day, booth
Yeah.
duty.
Yes.
So how did your role at Pivotal prepare you for what you're doing now?
Well, I got to spend time with Cote.
Uh-huh.
That prepares you for just about anything.
That's right. Gives you motivation to leave.
It gave me a really good taste of Cloud Foundry, the community and the users. You know, I joined Pivotal before it became an open source project. So Cloud Foundry has only been an open source project since January of 2015. And it really gave me a good opportunity to not only better understand the technology and the community and the projects that are part of Cloud Foundry, but it also gave me an opportunity to understand the users. And for me, really keeping a user-centric focus is important, because at the end of the day, the community is important, the developers and the platform are important, but also equally important is the users and how they're using Cloud Foundry and what they're using it to enable in their own organizations.
Cool. When you talk about users, how much on the developer side have you been looking at? How much on the ops side? Where would you put your focus?
Well, that is a great question, Barton. In 2017, we've really decided to take a hard focus on the developer story. So for those that are coming to Cloud Foundry Summit in June 13th through 15th in sunny Santa Clara, you will hear me talk about the developers are the new heroes. They're the heroes of the transformation that many of these enterprise organizations are undergoing, and how do we do a better job of both highlighting what they're doing and enabling them to be successful with Cloud Foundry.
And so your background is, because you came in first at Cloud Foundry as the head of VP of Technology or?
VP of Strategy.
Okay. And then before that at Pivotal, what were you doing?
I was doing a lot of different things. Last, I was doing basically product management for the users. So spending a lot of time as the face of the product to the users of Cloud Foundry and our Pivotal Cloud Foundry, getting a better understanding of what they were doing, why they were using it, and where their struggles were with the product.
Okay. So as you said, you come at it from more of a user point of view, and that's your main sort of...
It's been my whole career.
Well, there you go. Our Cote, now you asked some questions. I know you're going to monopolize it anyway, so let's start it now.
I was only thinking, we can keep it short, but just one question. As I often think, one of the things that's interesting about the Cloud Foundry Foundation is there's a lot of, I don't know what you call them, end users, not software vendors, who are involved. And what's your experience of one, what they're interested in, and then what they end up doing? And I ask this because in all of the years of open source stuff I've ever followed, and I guess we're at OSCON, it's always been a dream that the end users would get involved and complete the arc of Richard Stallman's idea of controlling your source code, but they never really have seemed to show up. And so seems to be an instance where they are showing up. And so what's their involvement? What are these organizations doing?
I think they're just starting to get their feet wet. I mean, for many organizations, the idea of open source is powerful because they're in the midst of transforming their organizations. They're becoming software-centric. They're really starting to take software and technology seriously. It's becoming strategic for them. And so with open source, they're able to leverage that and take a much more vendor-neutral approach. So they have an opportunity to move or port to something else. But two, they can also contribute back to the upstream in order to pull in feature functionality that they'd like to see. So they're not only on the receiving end of the technology and using it strategically and in new ways, but they're now contributing back and really building a virtuous cycle of participating in where that technology is going.
Yeah, and do you think this is something I encounter a lot is, or at least in my mind I encounter, people don't verbalize this a lot, but they're sort of they're a little shaky on sharing their findings of how to do all this infrastructure stuff. Yeah. And I'm often trying to encourage them I remember I was at some conference and someone from a big hardware store came up to me and was like, thanks for that other hardware store, talking about how they do all of their stuff. And I was thinking yeah, but that's not really going to help you, right? being able to provision your servers faster isn't really, like, if that's how you're going to succeed at business, you've got bigger problems. And so like do you encounter that notion of like, we don't want to share what we're doing at the infrastructure level, or is that thawing some, or what's your sense for that?
I think I'm starting to see some of the, the walls around that break apart. I mean, for many years, and I've been in tech 20 years now, and for a long time it was all, I'm a unique snowflake, everything I do is proprietary, I'm not going to share anything, including what data center I use and what kind of racks I use, right? And I think more and more users are really understanding that that is not differentiating. No one cares.
Yeah.
It's what's differentiating, what's unique, and what you should really think about as proprietary is going to be the applications that on top of that really, take your business in new directions. And so that really lets people relax a little bit and say, hey, I think I'd like to share a little bit of pro tips with other users to say, hey, this is what worked for me, you should try this, or hey, this is the approach we've taken. So I've seen a lot more open kimono around the approaches and lessons learned. But one of the things I also advocate, particularly with the open source, as an open source foundation, is for all of these companies that are becoming software companies, and we've talked, in our last podcast, we talked about the skills gap. And how there's not enough people.
That's right.
And it's growing. And I think we've heard it from many users that, like, Express Scripts is going to hire 1,000 people this year. We keep hearing those big numbers from these large companies. And as I think about trying to hire developers and where there's already a shortage, if you're a company trying to hire people, you're a company that's trying to change, the best way to do that is talk more about what you do. Get on every stage you can. Do every press interview you can. Because that not only tells your shareholders or stakeholders or people that are investing in you and using you the great things you're doing internally, but it is also a great way to appeal to talent, to bring in new talent. So I am continuously advocating that as one of the aspects of change. When you're trying to become a technology company, talk about what you do as much as you possibly can.
Yeah. So I had two more questions. Do you have more questions, Barton?
Well, I want to follow on what you were saying. You talk about sharing knowledge with users. Now, you all, and I forget the exact terminology of how you are affiliated with the Linux Foundation, what the term is, but to what extent are you also doing knowledge sharing within the other projects, like looking to the CNCF or Hyperledger or whatever, that you all do knowledge sharing on community development and technological practices? Yeah,
we are. So Cloud Foundry Foundation is a distributed or a collaborative project underneath the Linux Foundation.
Okay.
And so what that means is we are part of the Linux Foundation family, but we are a separate legal entity. And what is really great about that is there are 60 projects underneath the Linux Foundation. And Jim Zinman, who runs the Linux Foundation, has done an amazing job to really build out a structure that allows us to share and leverage best practices and a framework and capabilities without having to recreate those every single time, which is the value of being part of the larger Linux Foundation. And we do spend a lot of time talking to our other sister projects, the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, OCI, Hyperledger, including Node and JS and even automotive grade Linux. I mean, there's so many projects that are part of Linux Foundation that it's, that would be remiss of us to not share that knowledge in an open source community.
Yeah. So do you have something actually formal, like the retreat that you have, where you all get together and give presentations
make
and
s'mores
things
and
like that?
We do. There's
campfire
retreats,
and
we have campfires, there's some
singing
trust
open
falls.
source songs and
Yeah, there's some kumbaya, there's a little bit of a campfire. They don't like those in the office anymore, so we had to go outside.
Probably has a bad smell.
No, Jim does a really great job of pulling everyone together once a quarter and really, kind of forcing hard conversations and lessons learned. And everyone, all the other executive directors are amazing and being pretty open kimono about sharing lessons learned and ideas. In fact, there's one of them right there, the esteemed Brian Bellendorf.
Learning lessons as he walks.
He is bestowing wisdom.
That's right.
Brian.
as one does.
So I'll only ask one question I had.
Just one? You can do two.
Well, I know, but whatever. Well, okay, maybe
we'll start with one, see how that goes, and if it goes well.
Well, the other is two open it. So here's a question I like to ask people every now and then on any topic. Never mind all this stuff here. Like, is there like some talk you would want to give that you have just like a vague notion of, and like what would that talk be? Like, like sometimes I'm walking around and I think like, oh, this would be an interesting talk, and then I forget it. but hopefully you don't forget it. Like, what would let's do a little
Well, let's
whiteboarding
give an
here.
example to help Abby.
Like, what's an example? I was thinking it was of course a counterintuitive thing. Hold on, I gotta think about it. It was a combination of the there's the principle of least interest, which says in any relationship, whoever's the least interested holds the most power.
I'm sorry.
Then,
What?
Like think about it. If,
See what I did there?
Barton nodded off.
yeah, you have two people.
It's a power grab.
Two. Yeah, that's a joke. Anyways, and then there's this other thing I read in the Google SRE book, which is like, you should never like deliver 100% service, because then people will depend on it, and when failure happens, you'll get in trouble. So always basically pad your availability.
Oh, I like that. Set the bar low and then step right over it. Isn't that what you always used to tell me, Cote?
Yes, that's my professional advice to everyone. Or to summarize it, as it says on Bukowski's headstone, don't try. So like, I think that would be an interesting little 5 to 30 minute talk about like how this kind of
how to set the bar low.
this approach kind of like, it not only will allow you to have happiness in life, but the people who depend on you, because they're not like over depending on you, they'll be more resilient on their own. It's a path to resilience.
And we do this a multidisciplinarian thing. So in other words,
sure.
Microservices in your life.
You're not just talking about tech, though, right? You're talking about
yeah. I mean,
Something about it, the lifestyle chaos monkey.
Yeah, just like it's just like a metaphor for like, I don't know. It's not even a metaphor.
I like that.
That's my
simile.
That's my whole point. So like, that's a vague notion of a talk that I have in my head.
Do I have any?
Yeah.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, they'll give us one. That's not too embarrassing.
No, it's not too embarrassing. Well, all right, so I won't tell you that one then. Let's
and that
see.
one's off the list too.
Hold on, I'm going down the list. Which ones are not embarrassing?
Okay, you can tell us the embarrassing ones. I'll give you permission.
No, I think like what I was just ranting about, which is, organizations don't talk enough about what they do. I think I would give a talk just on, hey, if you're trying to change your organization or trying to change your culture, talk about it. Like ad nauseum, talk about it. And I think that is, I would just give a talk just on that. In fact, I've been thinking about writing a post on that, because I don't think people understand this, that if people are used to keeping the information proprietary and secret, and we're not going to share what we do. But if I've learned anything from Retros of Pivotal, share often and really talk about what you're doing and both your successes as well as your failures, because we're at such an interesting point in the technology evolution. Technology is changing faster than I think anyone can keep up, and we know that users are definitely not keeping up, and we are failing, them as an industry by not really doing a good job of coming together and communicating effectively what is changing and why, and what does all of these things mean. And so for them, I'd ask the users to really do a good job of, one, pushing us as an industry to speak up more and give a better narrative around what we're doing, but then also for them to really talk about their failings and what's worked and what's not, so that we all have an opportunity to learn from that.
Yeah, that would be great. I mean, I think there's like, in my standard stump speech, there's like a little 3-minute part where I'm like, you should do more internal marketing, next slide. And, I don't know, the details of that would be really useful. Yeah. I mean, there's some good obvious examples. Like I was up at Verizon, they do these like DevOps events, and they get everyone together and they have like a mini DevOps days.
Basking Ridge.
Yeah. I think there's some trademark, they can't call it a DevOps days or whatever, but whatever. And it is like, it's a good example of just like spreading that knowledge. But I mean, what you're talking about is a lot more interesting, and it's more detailed of like, here's good examples and actually like tactical stuff to go over, and also just encouraging people to do it.
I think it's something they struggle with, and I can't tell you how many times I hear from users that are like, hey, I'd like to really talk to this press, or I'd like to really talk about this, but I get blocked by my comms team, or I'm blocked by PR or legal, which I know you hear this too, and my advice back to them is fight that battle now. Fight it, because this will be a limiter for you in the long term. If you were trying to hire talent quickly, you need to be able to talk about what you're doing.
That would be good. Then you could go on the PR conference circuit. That's where you would want to talk to them in their industry group and be like, remember all that Web 2.0 stuff we were supposed to share and everything? You got some of that right. But now let's expand that to like some deeper stuff about how you do things.
Well, I think it's interesting that balance you have, as you say, talking publicly, whether it's social media or actually going out and giving talks, is letting people be free and saying what they want, at the same time being afraid that certain people may not, they may say the wrong things or things that will get the company in a bad light. But I know
It will happen. I mean,
So I think what we had. So when I was at Sun back in the day, that was basically a social media policy of don't be stupid. So we will let everyone go out and talk. We'll assume that everyone are adults.
was there a definition around stupid?
I don't know.
There was a
that's part of the beauty of it.
I think Jonathan Schwartz.
Yeah.
He actually had one blog entry that was kind of like, here's our guidelines, and I think it was maybe like 15 points.
But it was still pretty left up to interpretation, which
Yeah.
that way didn't. And you,
It was kind of defining stupid.
Right.
And then
There
saying,
you
like,
double
don't do
click on
this.
stupid. Well, and I remember when he came in to talk to our group, he asked how many people here are blogging, and a couple of us raised our hands, and he said everybody here should be blogging. And I think that was just.
See, that's where I'm saying right there. Everybody should
Well,
be
no,
blogging.
exactly, because it gets the knowledge out. It helps to humanize, and I know also we were self-policing in that there was a internal blog that we could give hints and whatnot, and there was one blogger who publicly said something bad about a competitor, and everybody internally jumped all over him and said, "Not cool. This is not the way we do it," etc. And so, once again, self-policing. We sort of righted the ship from inside. So,
It's a good friend of mine always says, keep it classy.
That's
yeah,
right.
with a K.
Keep it classy.
Well, on that note, if we go further, we'll break that rule. So,
Exactly.
So we should
Will we?
stop. Well, I'll inevitably backslide into
What?
slide.
Never.
Well,
It seemed
thank
like
you.
a good end.
No.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us here today at OSCON in Austin, Texas. Once again, I'm Barton George,
Yeah, I'm Cote.
and we
I'm
have had
Abby
the
Kearns.
distinct pleasure of talking to Ms. Abby Kearns.
Yeah.